a slide deck you're going to present, you could get that going as I'm talking. So I'm going to start my 2 seconds silence now. Thanks very much, everyone, and welcome to this virtual staff room. I'm delighted to be able to welcome Jackie Grubb from City College Plymouth this morning, who's going to share her 10 things, ... And so without further ado, I'm going to hand straight over to Jackie. Thanks very much for coming along, Jackie.
Great. Thank you very much, Paul. And hello, everybody. And thank you for having me. You know, this is a great opportunity to share some of our experiences here at City College Plymouth, where we're just undergoing a transformation in terms of, you know, the learning from COVID, but actually as an organisation as well, we're creating our college, or the college of the future. So what I just wanted to share with you today really is the things that we don't want to lose, and the really positive things that we have achieved or have undergone in terms of the last 12 months and COVID. We were on a really exciting digital transformation anyway. However, probably like most, this has really accelerated it. And we're really, really excited in terms of what the future brings. So firstly, you know, those reflections, and, you know, I've spoken with staff about this as well. And one of the biggies actually that's come out is the opportunities to connect and collaborate with lecturers and peers and all staff really, either internally, but externally also. Outside the classroom. So that's not just regionally, it's nationally and actually globally with some people. So we've increased our use of our virtual learning environment, increased the use of social media, classrooms, Google Sites, and this has really improved the communication and provided additional course resources and materials. So staff are really engaged and really, really excited, because if we'd have made the arrangement to get on the train or meet people in person, some of those things probably wouldn't have happened. And I know that my digital person, Mark, has been in conversation with Steve at Leeds already this week, and they've had a great conversation in terms of what they're doing and what we can do for the future. So really appreciate that. And actually, it's really creating something really dynamic for all of us. Also, I think the pandemic has been the biggest event in education since education began. I think I can agree with that, can't we? You know, and since, you know, teaching and learning started, and the rapid adoption of new methods and technologies should perpetuate a culture of creativity and taking risks. So we've done quite a lot of work in the last couple of years anyway, in terms of our vision and purpose at City College, and also thinking about our attitude and our behaviours. So COVID really has accelerated that also, because it's brought creativity into the classroom, it's made people take risks because they've had to, and it's really created some ownership and some responsibility in terms of really creating a good learning experience. So that's something else. And that actually has led to real innovation in the way that the curriculum has been developed. So also we've been undertaking a new strategic plan in the last year or so, and we're putting together a 10-year curriculum strategy. And really how that's been developed during COVID, it's just hugely accelerated. And, you know, resources, assignments and assessments are designed, created, shared and approached through the use of the online platforms and EdTech tools. So that may not have happened before, but because people have had to use those tools, it's just created something even more dynamic for us to go forward. We've also been reconsidering the pedagogy side of things. And just going back to basics in terms of teaching, learning and assessment, in line with what's out there and what we've gained from our colleagues and what we've gained from research. and in line with technological advancement. So we've done a lot of things, including opportunities for experimentation, creativity, and different ways of delivering in the removing of barriers to learning. So an example of that was we were quite aware that digital poverty played something quite high on the agenda. And in Plymouth, we have got quite a few areas of deprivation. So there was lots of our students that didn't have the technology, or they didn't have the resources to do what we needed to do. So we put together a sort of second-hand system, if you like. So people put in all their old devices, and we cleaned them up, and then we shared those out. And that initiative really had impact in terms of removing barriers to all, in terms of everybody being able to continue with their learning. At the same time, we had a huge investment in terms of Chromebooks and further resources to aid that. And actually, I did have staff that were delivering dongles to people's houses to make sure that our students weren't left behind because they didn't have what they needed in terms of supporting learning going ahead, and leaving them behind not to achieve their qualification and not to create a barrier for them to progress onto further study or what they need to do in terms of that next step. So the online learning has really come on leaps and bounds. And I think now another one of those things that we don't want to lose is that we really feel that online learning has as much value as face-to-face delivery. It's just different. So we've been doing a lot of work in terms of don't go back to what we've always done. Let's pick up all those good things. Let's be agile. Let's be flexible. Let's think about the student, where they are, who they are, how they learn, and adapt our delivery in terms of that. And what we're creating and what we don't want to lose is that whoever you are, wherever you are in the world, that learning still can take place. So also the use of technology has supported accessibility. So me leading on to being able to learn whether you're on the bus, whether you're at home, whether you're in college, and then there's not a barrier for you to progress. That use of technology has really supported the accessibility. And I think examples of that are, the changing page color in Google Docs. And a lot of our students have been using the voice to text mode as well. So, that's been really innovative in terms of our students learning in a different way. But at the same time, we've completed lots of continuous professional development to make sure that our staff are supported and developed in the delivery of that also. And Google and their platforms have been absolutely fundamental in that. So thank you very much. So in terms of in the classroom and and in terms of learning, we've also been doing quite a lot of work in terms of the support and the tutorial role. And as we all know, in education, the pastoral side of things and the tutorial side of things are really important. And we have an obligation to safeguard our students. So in terms of the remote delivery and learning that's been carrying out, safeguarding has been absolutely on the top of our agenda. So whether it's embedded in lessons or whether it's part of the tutorial role, we've been looking at different ways to interact and support students. And it's much easier to connect instantly with students to offer them assistance. So another thing that we don't want to lose is that instant getting in touch and that instant connectivity with our students when we need to do that. So I suppose that leads me on to, something else that we don't want to lose is that learning can happen anywhere, anytime. So I talked about connectedness. So the importance of connectedness, including access to other educators, we've really built a robust system now in terms of online continuous professional development. And we've developed a lot of that via Google Chats, Twitter, and lots of other platforms. But our staff feel really confident, and, you know, we've still got work to do, but COVID has really accelerated in terms of us talking to each other, connecting with each other, co-creating, and ensuring we're developing each other to be the best we can to deliver to our students. So finally, really from me, we've been looking at a mix of online and face-to-face delivery, which will have greater benefits in the long term, because what we can't forget is something that is really on the top of the minds of our students and everybody really is about global climate and resource emergency. So we're really looking now as well of the mix of online and face-to-face delivery that will have greater benefits in the long term in the global climate and resource emergency. So those are my 10 things. So thank you for listening.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jackie. That was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So I will open it up to questions from the floor, as it were, in a moment. So as before, if people have a question, if you want to raise your hand, I will come to you in a moment. As soon as you're ready, I'm going to go to Jamie first, if that's okay. So Jamie, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Paul, and thanks, Jackie, for taking us through that. I was making various comments in the chat thread as you were speaking because there were so many great insights you were sharing there. But as somebody who's knows your organisation a little bit, like I do, and like certain members of the C Learning team do, one of the things I think I said to you when we first got to know each other was we have the privilege of working with lots of colleges and schools and universities all over the world. So we get a very sort of privileged insight into different cultures and ways of working and such like. And one of the things that really struck me about your organization is you have a really fabulous culture. And I'll talk a little bit more about what I mean by that. People seem to feel confident and free to innovate. Now, from my experience, that only happens when the leadership has enabled that. It doesn't tend to just sort of naturally happen in too many other ways. And I'd be really interested in your insights and your perspectives on, as a chief executive and as the principal of the organization, what sort of insights or experiences would you share with everybody else on the call and that we can share with afterwards in this recording for other leaders who might be wondering, well, how has Jackie got that going? How has Jackie created a culture where people feel safe to try new things and safe to innovate, and not just do that, but they're almost excited by it, because you can feel that enthusiasm. Whenever Ian and myself or Paul have been talking to your colleagues and your students as well, I might add, you can feel it even through the screen. Like even when you're on a video call, you can feel that sort of custodianship of your organization. I think that's something really special. I would love to see it everywhere. How have you achieved that in your words?
Okay, well, first of all, Jamie, I'm completely humbled and privileged, and I thank you for your comments. Thank you very much. And it's not just about me, it's collective across the whole organisation. But my passion is, as we were talking before we came on here, is health and well-being. And I absolutely think that health and well-being should overarch everything that we do and everything that we live and breathe. You know, working in education is hard enough that what I want is that when our staff wake up in the morning, that they want to come to City College and do what they need to do. So we are doing a lot of work around culture and how we can do our best in terms of supporting each other, in whether it's, you know, a coffee break or it's embedded and threaded in our teaching and learning, that health and well-being is threaded through everything that we live and breathe. So that is my absolutely number one. So I could say that it's other things, but I think fundamentally that overarches everything. Then attitudes, behaviours and culture, again, is top of my priority list. So you could put the best system in place, but if you don't have the attitude, behaviours and culture, then it can't be as good as it can be. So the first thing that we did was to get a real robust vision and purpose. So that vision and purpose was put together in terms of lots of collective collaboration from stakeholders, from governors, from staff, students, parents. And we had lots of working groups and discussions in terms of what do we want City College to feel like and what do we want it to look like. So when you walk through our door, what do we want that to feel like? So we spent a considerable amount of time talking that through and wanting to know what our organisation was going to be like. So that was a collective get-together from absolutely everybody. So putting that together, as you can imagine, was probably quite a big task. So we came up with our vision of purpose, and our vision was to be the learning destination of choice. So whoever you are, whatever you need to do in terms of lifelong learning, we want to be the learning destination of choice. So the next thing was to make sure that we embed and thread our values in everything that we live and breathe every day. So whether it's me doing an all-staff briefing, whether it's a one-to-one with a manager and their team, whether it's a teacher to their students, that we have ownership, respect, and integrity. So those are our 3 values, and we embed and thread that into everything that we do. So the ownership one in there is, you know, people have got to take ownership. So the culture that we've created is one of ownership, responsibility, and accountability. And that creates people to take risks. So we know that none of us are perfect, and sometimes things will go wrong. And if things go wrong, then we work together to put them right. Because I know that if people don't take risks, we will not complete our journey to excellence. So the consistency around those values and that vision and purpose is absolutely key. And I also feel that I have an accountability that I set the culture of the organisation. So I have complete accountability for the culture of our organisation and take that really seriously and act as a role model for that.
I think that's absolutely brilliant. Sorry, I'm hogging the floor, Paul. I'll give up. I'll give up to colleagues in a moment. I know people have got their hands up, and we've been joined by other leaders as well from other colleges I can see. But I do think that's just exemplary. And I with my employer head on for a second as well, for colleagues that I know have joined from other colleges in the last few minutes, I had the privilege to spend a bit of time with some of the students at Jackie's college at City College Plymouth. And I said to Jackie and the team afterwards, I actually said to the students at the time, I said, were you prepped for that? Because we did these sessions, and honestly, they were some of the most employable people you could ever meet in a college. They were professional. They were so employable, for want of a better way of putting it. And it's not something that we see all the time. And I think the part of the reason for that, in my opinion, from the outside looking in, has got to be something to do with all the things that you were just talking about, Jackie, about that culture you've created. It becomes infectious and it cross-pollinates to the actual students. So, of course, from a college point of view, in preparing people for the world of work out there and their futures, I think what you've created there is something very, very special. And with my sort of research head on, I'm always fascinated to sort of see how we can codify that and how you can almost take that and sort of share the good practice and help others to learn some of the lessons that you've got going on there. So I see Stephen Spencer's joined us, and Stephen's doing some absolutely amazing work over at Sheffield College, and I see similar things there as well. So it's funny, there's quite an alignment for those of us on the call who have experience of the different organisations on the call. There's quite a common sort of thing going on around culture, I think. Anyway, I shall leave the floor now, Paul, and let Ian chip in.
Yeah, excellent. Over to you, Ian.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys. Jackie, again, I was going to ask you a question about where you got your sort of energy from, but now you've explained to me your early morning swimming in the sea. I don't even have to ask that one. But I've got two sort of bigger questions. One is, the work that you're doing at City College Plymouth, how do you see that affecting the sort of digital change agenda in the wider Plymouth sort of community? So that obviously lots of cities and towns up and down the country are having to reimagine themselves, and I know from the work that's been done in Sheffield, Leeds, and whatever else, the education sort of leaders are a big part of that change agenda. So do you see that as a role for the college? And then the second one is with the changing sort of delivery, would you see the role of the physical estate being, and I know for some courses obviously you need the physical bit, but what is the role for the physical estate in your next 10-year sort of vision? So the college in Plymouth and the buildings of the college.
Okay, thank you. Well, from a very early stage in my career, and I think I'm naturally like this anyway, I've always shared, and always talking to my peers saying, disseminate good practice and share resources, and then you get things back. So in terms of the city-wide agenda, we share. So when I talked about our strategic planning and my vision and purpose, I've involved all the key stakeholders and high-profile people, including MPs, CEO from the local hospital, the CEO from the local authority, and shared our vision and shared anything that they want to take themselves. And so that is with the digital agenda as well. So an example of that is that we've got a big organization, that an employer that we work with, that is quite behind on the digital agenda. But in terms of what we've been doing with our teaching, learning and assessment, we're working collective and collaboratively together so we can bring it all up to the 21st century. And that is something that is a knock-on effect throughout the city. So, okay, we haven't got everything. There are other organisations or other stakeholders that may have things that we haven't got. So we're ensuring that we work together to get the best possible outcome. Also, we've looked at our systems and we're doing a lot of work because we've got this 10-year strategy. We've just invested in a new student record system, and that will talk to all those people outside as well. So, that's what we've been doing in terms of that. Even more, or as exciting, when you talk about the asset and the estate, one of our strategic actions is a 10-year master plan for our asset and our estate. So we know that in the future, organisations might be smaller, but we need to change it for more independent learning and more bespoke learning. So we are actually doing that exciting piece of work as we speak. So we're looking at all of our estate and we are transforming it in a 10-year master plan to fit in for the College of the Future.
Okay. No, that's really good, Jackie. I'm sure that some of the comments that you shared there will be picked up by Stephen from Sheffield and College. But it's great to see that sort of impact that the college is having in the wider change agenda across Plymouth and the surrounding districts, because I think that again, that leadership, showing the art of what's possible, just brings confidence into other people to say, well, if Jackie and the team at City College Plymouth can do it, then why can't we make the same change as well? So congratulations on that. I'll pass the floor to Stephen.
Can I just add to that though, because I've just got something that might be useful to people. We're just in the process of transforming our library into a digital village. So that everything now will be even more digitally orientated. And we also have a maths centre of excellence. And what we do is we don't just use it for our students, we use it, the community of Plymouth can use that space to enhance or to develop their own work pathways of where they need to be. So it goes back to that sharing as well.
Excellent, thank you very much. I'll pass over to Stephen Hope.
Hi Jackie, how are you doing? You all right?
Oh, yeah, good, thank you. Good, thank you. I want to thank you as well, Stephen. You know, you've been quite fundamental in terms of collaboration in recent times.
No, thank you. No, I appreciate it. I think we live by what we say, don't we, in terms of the open door policy and a real honesty in terms of something I get into trouble for on a regular basis is I write something, I create something, and then I share it outside of the organisation and then apologise to the ELT that I've done so, and long may it continue. They can always tell me off for sharing something I shouldn't have done. Yeah, I'm really interested in terms of that whole approach to collectivism and the collaboration across outside of the silos of organisation. You shared some great examples of Plymouth, but I'm really interested in I'm starting a group, and Stephen Spence is going to hate this. It's West Yorkshire currently, Stephen, but it is going to transcend to the whole of Yorkshire, where anybody that works around teaching and learning and blended learning is going to come up with a collective strategy, and there will be one strategy for Yorkshire rather than everybody working individually. Is that transcending to AOC and the powers that be at the top, CEOs and great individuals like yourself? That are they coming together and saying, let's forget league tables, let's forget us competing against the local colleges and nationally? How do we create an overall strategy for teaching and learning, improvement around digital access? Is that being considered at CEO and principal level to then say, how can we just improve the whole of England and the UK around this process, and let's create one thing that people can apply to the context of Plymouth or Leeds or Sheffield as an example?
The College of the Future is just that. My personal opinion is if we don't do that, then there won't be a college. So as I say, the College of the Future is about collective working and collaboration. And, you know, I know that when you collaborate, you get the best outcome. We can't do anything on our own. So that is coming through. Whether everybody takes that view, you know, I can't answer that, but I know that I take that view. And, you know, I work with fellow principals and CEOs to make that happen. And even in Devon, so, you know, I've talked, you know, locally. If I talk regionally, the Devon principals and CEOs regularly meet together so that that we can have a collective and collaborative approach to that. And that is in the College of the Future going forward as well. Teaching, learning and assessment and the student journey is the most important priority. And if we don't get that right, then everything else falls down. If we do get that right, then everything just naturally comes with us. And that's what I believe in.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. I've got a question here from Caroline, if we may, and actually interesting. It could be to Jackie, but it could be to other people on the call. So open to anyone who can answer to this. That would be great. How important do you feel the use of technology has been in widening access, particularly for SEN students or those with caring responsibilities?
I'm happy to let somebody else have a view.
Anybody want to take that? I mean, kind of anyone in an education institution could answer that, couldn't they? Any hands?
I'm more than happy just to say that I've seen a great example from the Lighthouse organisation, which is a school for SEND, predominantly autistic children in Leeds, and seen some great practice around continuation of routine and the research they've done around autistic children and their preference to learn behind a screen. As long as they've got access to a device and connectivity, they've seen an actual increase in engagement and learning from that specific. I know SEND is such more a wider spectrum, but that's been a great example. Their issue is actually returning to the building and the disruption that will cause to teachers and those learners. I think technology is a tool; it's not a magic wand. And I think, like any other student, I think there's some great practice, and the reduction in some of these great tools from Google will see a reduction in investment and cost for SEND and foundation studies provision, because the tools are so much cheaper and much more accessible is why I'd say.
Absolutely. Anyone else? We've got other people from other institutions. Steve, do you want to sense? Have you got a thought?
I'm actually in a quiet mood, which isn't like me normally, but not too much on this. Just to say, sorry for getting. I've had to move a few things to just get in, and then I've got to leave a bit early. I've got again an online support session at 1, but it was great to pick up a few bits there, Jacqueline. And actually, I've promised that I'll send Mark some stuff today. I met them, Mark and the team, I think last week, and we're great. And I am late with that. Sorry, I've got to send a few things over. I thought the best thing there just coming out was the bit where you'd mentioned about well, not verbatim here, I noted a few things, but it was like you feel like you're leading from the front and that you're sort of going through it as well, and the bit about again, you said it in a slightly different term, but it reminds me of what our principal Angela says a few times, and I do really like this, where she said, you know, high challenge but high support, and I really like that, and that came through a little bit with what you were saying about one of the values that I think the first value that you'd mentioned there, and I think it's brilliant again that you've gone in and led from the front in terms of we're all doing this. It's not like, oh, you were doing it because you've got to do it. Everybody's sort of on this big journey. So I think that was great, and I really enjoyed that. But I just wanted to mention that outside of the question from Paul. Just on that question there, Paul, I would say that a bit like Stephen, I've not got loads on this. I think in our curriculum planning that we're obviously working on at the minute, we've got a few questions in there that everybody's having to contemplate, from whether they're directors of curriculum or, you know, or teaching. Is the couple of things is how different is your intent and implementation of your is going to be this September compared to September 2019. So don't lose all this wonderful stuff that we've now learned and this new skill set by going exactly back to 2019. You know, and the brilliant thing about myself getting out there with so many staff and getting into these online sessions is one of the first things I do in our collaborative meeting after is say, what are you keeping then for next year? What are you keeping? And it's just the feedback coming in is great. And I had a lady who teaches textiles yesterday saying that she just loves recording the videos and putting them on the classroom and letting students go in and practice and practice and practice and come back to the lesson. So there are a couple of the questions, and specifically answering that, I think it's adult provision in terms of Sheffield that seems to be showing probably the greatest change. So we've got some faculties who might change slightly. That's one of the other things that we've said. Don't, you know, we're not giving you a number. Don't go randomly changing and going, oh, we're going to do this much online. Do use online, plan for it in terms of your intent, plan for it effectively, and then let your teachers work out how they can use the technology effectively. They've just been doing it for a year. That's our sort of principle. But I think one of the biggest areas to pull it together is the adult provision. We're already now looking at far more flexible ways of offering adult retraining, whereas previously all of it had to be, you know, coming in at 6 till 9 to study at our Hillsborough campus or City campus. Well, we've moved some of our health and social care, we've moved some of our other aspects. A lot of that is going to be primarily offered online now. For me, what a win that is if we can support the retraining of adults in a very different society from September. I think that's brilliant.
I wonder whether sorry, Ian, I'll come back to you in a moment. I wonder whether it's listening to the response that I wonder whether it's about that COVID has forced us to really consider that time flexibility. That however hard we try, we are locked into a time restriction, aren't we, within a normal school or college day. And it might be that it runs, you know, from 9 till 10, but we kind of locked it into a time scale. And the minute we've had to force ourselves to allow for synchronous and asynchronous, for example, and all the video recording can bring us, allows, I'm thinking particularly about those groups that Caroline mentioned in her question about those like carers, where the pressure of time is that if that person you're caring for suddenly needs something desperately at the moment that your maths lesson is about to start, then the math lesson gets missed. That's the bottom line. Whereas now, because it's possible to access them at a time that is convenient to you, that learning genuinely does happen at any time for you because the resources are there to allow it, that it gives you better time to manage your stresses and strains, puts you in a better place for learning, allows you to access it at a convenient time. And there's all sorts of benefits, isn't there, in that kind of time management. And I think that's a key bit of that, what Lou Mycroft calls no-go backery. We can't go back to that locked into a time slot. And if they aren't there at that hour, then they miss it completely. That doesn't have to happen anymore, do we? We know that now, and we know that it works. And the other thing, and I will then pass over to Ian, I was delighted to see, Jackie, when you said there's much value in the online as there is the face-to-face. And I think we understood that now, haven't we? Absolutely. And I think before we didn't have the evidence to know, and there was always kind of almost a suspicion that it wouldn't be. And it's not to say that face-to-face isn't crucial and really important, but it's making us think really carefully about, so what does work well online and what do we have to deliver face to face? So we're being more, and that also leads back into your pedagogical review, I think, isn't it? Which bits have to be face to face, which bits I could not possibly teach in a video. Do I need to be there checking, understanding, checking the concepts embedded before I move on? And it's that whole kind of process of the flexibility of time and that pedagogical review that you've built in, I think, is going to completely change the face of the offering that we give to our learners now, I think. And that I find really exciting. So there we go. I'm going to get up your soapbox and invite Ian to comment, and then we'll go to Johnny straight after.
Yeah, thanks for that, Paul. So Jackie, just going back to your green sort of agenda, sort of aspirations. Over the years, I've seen lots and lots of really great examples of where colleges and schools and universities have actively worked to reduce the amount of unnecessary travel between campuses and between for students and whatever else. And there were a couple of things that just floated around in the back of my mind. One was when we had the conversation with your students, there was one student who was traveling from Bristol to the college because it delivers great education. But I think she was saying that on a Friday afternoon, she had to come down to do a 1-hour lesson or something like that. Wouldn't it be great if there was the flexibility and trust that she could join her class sort of from Bristol and avoid the travel all the way to the college if she wanted. I think it was always if she wanted. And there were obviously other people who said, no, I need to get into the college because my home environment is just an absolute nightmare. So the college is a safe place for me to learn. But just picking up the sort of green thing, then are you trying to encourage or work with your staff and students where if they don't need to be in sort of college in order to do the work, I'm thinking of not necessarily teaching and learning, but back office finance or other sort of organizations that they can choose when they work from home or not. And then other larger activities like enrollment and registration, where, you know, it used to be you all have to come into college to do these things. Are you looking for in the future for this to be more flexible? I'm the customer, the student. If I want to enroll online, thank you. If I want to enroll coming in, thank you. But give me the choice of how I do some of these things. Is that something you're looking to do?
I'm smiling because being in further education for over 30 years and a teacher myself, I've spent my whole career of getting students to attend. And, you know, when you go back to benchmark data, you know, getting the target of what the attendance should look like. So actually another real positive out of COVID is that, you know, it's not necessarily what happens in the classroom, it's what happens wherever. I have taken the time, and I did this anyway, but I attend our student council monthly as a guest, and they have an opportunity on that agenda to ask me anything that they want. So I've taken that opportunity all the way through COVID of, you know, what is their experience in the classroom, what they want to see, and how would they like their learning to take place. So the biggest thing for me is not to blanket rule everything, because that just doesn't work. It's about bespoking to certain areas. So, you know, we've got an area like access with adults that, you know, could do 100% if they wanted to online. So that's an example of what we have achieved. So our access students, if they want to study online, they have that flexibility. There are other students, though, that feel more secure if they come into college, and that suits their needs. So we must make sure that we support them to do that also. In terms of, you know, poverty and deprivation, you know, bus fares and getting to college is a huge expense for a lot of people. So we are working through that agility of doing that. And coming up, you know, we're still we haven't got there yet, but working through that in terms of the green agenda, but also to support that student. In terms of staff, it's not called flexible working, it's called agile working. And we've found staff that have worked much better at home. And actually an example of that is one of our teaching and learning coaches. The things that she's done working at home in recent months has just been phenomenal. So why change that if she doesn't want to? So in terms of inclusivity and fairness, that's not just something that I and my team can produce overnight. That is something that we're really thinking through and ensuring that we've got something robust that's inclusive and fair to all at the end of it. Yeah,
no, I mean, that's great to hear, Jackie, because what's at the root of that is that we all trust the people who work for us to be doing the work, whether they're physically in an office or at home or wherever it is, and we're measuring the outputs, aren't we? Not the fact that you just sat at that desk from 9 o'clock till 5 o'clock or whatever else. And then I think the other thing which you touched on right at the start, and it was reflected in the mission statement of the international school in Basel, where they got one of their younger students to come up with this amazing phrase, which is we all learn in different ways. And therefore, you know, if you're able to create that environment which allows the lady in Bristol to take part in a college course, or allows the student who needs to come into the college to come in, then I think that is really sort of creating the right environment for success. So long may that continue, Jackie.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Jackie. Johnny?
Yeah. Hi, Jacqueline. Thanks very much for the presentation. I think Ian's question, or your answer to it, partially answered mine. But anyway, I'll have a quick gab since I've got the floor. I love the fact that you've clearly not let a good crisis go to waste here, and you've really taken advantage of every possibility to take this acceleration that COVID has given to technology to put it to the best use of your learners. But my little wonder was this: it was around the innovation that comes probably from grassroots. I think you were just talking about a teacher who's done amazing things while being at home. How do you track innovation that comes from grassroots so that you can get it into a position that you can then put it into systematic planning?
I'm so pleased that you asked that, because I was going to try and get that at the end of the last question. So we've done not a traditional survey, but e-confidence. So we've got an understanding of where the e-confidence was with our staff last year. And standing here, I can think of 3 examples of staff that were quite challenged in terms of bringing digital into their classroom, because they hadn't had that much development in that before, that we are now using as examples of excellent practice, and we can't just stop them. They're going and going and going and delivering outstanding, brilliant, innovative lessons. And that goes back to the trust and, you know, letting people get on with things in their own time so that confidence can grow. Where if we'd have said, do this, this, and this, then it might not have been the case. And as I say, I can think of 3 examples that we have now got teachers who are sharing their brilliant practice to other teachers, where their e-confidence and their digital delivery was quite low in their opinion at the beginning of all of this.
Awesome. Sounds like a great place to work, Jacqueline.
Thank you.
You asking for a job, Johnny?
No, I don't want a job. Never.
No, not ever.
It also goes back to one of those what we don't want to lose, about people having the opportunity to connect and collaborate with everyone. You know, that people aren't getting on the train and they're going to meet on the 18th of March or whatever, that people are picking up the phone or having Google Meets or doing whatever they need to do to share their thoughts and their excitement, really, in the acceleration of digital going forward.
Excellent. Jamie?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, no, I didn't change my mind. I was just delayed reaction in taking my hand down. It wasn't a question for Jackie or anything, really. It was just an observation. But certainly from my experience of what happened in the last 12 months, I think we're going to look back on it in some ways as further education's finest hour in some ways, because I having worked in education for so many years as I have, I think part of it was to do with the fact that further education has to be agile to a certain extent, because it has to win its business constantly. It is quite commercially orientated. And it seems to me like if there were some lessons to be taken out of some of the things that have happened in the last 12 months, we could sort of almost extrapolate some of the things that have gone on in further education, and maybe the other elements of the post-compulsory education sector, such as universities, could perhaps learn a bit from that. I think I don't want to sound like I'm sort of setting up one area of education against another, but I do think that some of the universities have maybe struggled a bit more, from my observation, than some of the colleges have in general. Because I certainly observed an awful lot of colleges who just became the cavalry for themselves. They weren't waiting for help and support and assistance. They just huddled together, connected, and sort of got on with it to a certain extent. And there was an interesting comment made by Scott Hayden yesterday in the virtual staff room, and he made a really sort of quite powerful point, I thought, when he said that one of his, not exactly regrets, but one of the things he felt a little bit sad about was that he wonders whether that in his organization they missed the opportunity just to pause, because everybody went into reaction mode, didn't they? It's like, right, we've got to react to this unprecedented problem. Let's try and get on with it. And he said with hindsight, he wondered whether it would have been healthier and perhaps valuable to have hit the pause button and gone, hang on a second, before we do this, are students ready to just suddenly flip online completely in the way that we're all trying to do? And he said he felt a little bit, he didn't use the word guilty, but he felt a little bit sad about whether he missed that opportunity there. And maybe with hindsight, if it happened again, we'd hit the pause button before we suddenly rushed into reacting mode. I don't know whether anyone on the call's got any sort of observations on that. I see Stephen's commented, but that was just my observation, Paul.
And I can add to that really in terms of Scott, because I'm proud of each and every one of our staff in my organisation, but I led Scott in his organisation in a previous life. And if it wasn't for his innovation, his creativity, and just how brilliant he is, that's supported where I am today as well. So I thank him for that.
Yeah, it was indeed quite an amazing thing. Ian, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of ask Jackie. I was reading something from, I put it in the chat, the way in which Facebook and PayPal as organizations have grown. And I'm sure you recognize some of these sort of aspects in the way that City College Plymouth is growing. It was the last two sort of points that were made there about moving people away from perfectionism and accelerating the pace of change execution. And it's not that we don't want people to do great jobs. Absolutely, we want the student experience and the work that all the staff do to be of the highest sort of quality. But sometimes people never get to the point of execution because they just want it to be even better and better and better. Do you have a view, Jackie, about how you encourage people to sort of reach for the right level of excellence and get on with it rather than trying to just refine and refine and refine?
I absolutely do, because I'll take myself as an example there. I was that person myself one day, and through going through that myself, reflecting and thinking of improvement and looking at science and research, it doesn't work. And it's quite easy for anybody to get into that perfectionist mode. And we know that it doesn't work, and there's no such thing as perfect. And, when we have a propensity of putting pressure on ourselves to be perfect, we know that we don't get the best outcomes. So again, there's a leading by example of that to give people, it goes back to our values and our vision and, and our values for ownership and respect and integrity for people to take those risks. And if it doesn't always work out, everybody learns by their mistakes, don't they? That's absolutely proven. So I agree with you there totally.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jackie.
Excellent. Good. Sally, do you want to say something?
Yeah, sorry. Hi, everyone. My camera's off because I'm having Wi-Fi difficulties. But something that's been mentioned is about the availability of students to be able to access learning whenever they need to. And when I was at Leeds with Steve, we academically researched this with my learners, my adult learners, and overwhelmingly they said that being able to study flexibly, asynchronously, online had transformed their learning, and their caring responsibilities had been easier to manage. And so we're really hopeful that this will be a powerful piece that we can pull out, but especially as well around the SEND. I think in my class I had 14 learners, and I think 6 were identified as having complex needs, and all 6 had said that they found their learning difficulties easier to manage at home without the pressure of being in a live environment, be it in a live online classroom or in a live face-to-face classroom. So we're excited to bring that out.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's the kind of evidence that makes it clear that we can't go back, doesn't it? That we can't slip. And I think I've said it before in the virtual staff room that I think that the profession as a whole understands that they can't go back. But I do worry that there are some people who have struggled during COVID to adopt the technology, who will slowly and quietly try and sneak back to their old ways. And it's worth keeping our eye on those people. And it might be you even know who they are in your organization, to support them so that they don't, because they've done some great stuff, but they just want to go back to what's comfortable. And that's not necessarily going to be the best thing for their learners, or indeed for them. Stephen, did you want to say something? Stephen Spencer?
Yeah, don't worry about that. I get that a lot. Just on the that last point that you made there, one of the, and I think I may have briefly mentioned it yesterday, or I can't remember if I mentioned this or a podcast later on, where there seems to be this obsession with you've either got to love online learning or hate it, or you've either got to love education research or hate it. And I've heard some crazy things like saying, well, this proves that online learning doesn't work, doesn't it? And you know, I'm not enjoying it as much because of my students. And I quoted a paper that's a really good one, actually. In fact, I've still got it open, so I'll chuck it in the chat because I think it is worth, you know, having a read or sharing with your staff. Just and I keep saying we are still in like a bit of an emergency remote. I think we're still in that. We've not all planned for this and had. I think Stephen, you said yesterday about we're still in this sort of, we got thrust into it a little bit quicker than we wanted. So this has not all been planned for. We're still reacting. It's still what I would define as emergency remote teaching. Not saying we haven't done it very well, but when people are trying to kick it and say it doesn't work clearly, this and that, I keep saying if we hadn't have had it, no learning would have happened in the last year, or very little learning would have happened in the last year. And even where we've struggled and found out some issues, remember, you wouldn't take, and I've seen this, you wouldn't take your kids into a classroom and teach with them and then say, well, that proves that I'm on childcare duties with my kids today, and that proves that face-to-face teaching doesn't work because I've got my kids in, it doesn't work. And that's kind of what some of the things have been happening at home, where people have been teaching with their family there, having to homeschool at the same time, but then they're using that and going, well, it shows that online doesn't work, doesn't it? Because I can't teach very well, or I haven't got the skills to be able to do it. Where so that for me is nonsense. And actually what we should focus on is the things where it can help. And every teacher should have that professional responsibility to think, you know, this little bit of it is going to help me. Being able to record things is going to help me. Being able to use all the wonderful Google tools is going to help my students in terms of read and write from an inclusivity point of view. Being able to offer learning at different times, not being restricted, that's going to help me. Being able to have loads of different online formats, whether it's forms, Go format, whatever it is, I can do loads of recap and retrieval practice that we know is really good from a learning science point of view. I can have that all set out in front of me. All of that, that's amazing stuff. And that's where we need to focus. Every single curriculum area, every single teacher will have something that they can now utilize and enhance their provision through. And I get really annoyed with that business of when the odd person from the research ed community goes, well, it doesn't work, does it? That's just been proven. Sometimes, you know, that does annoy me a little bit. So on that, Paul, that just, I'm really on that at Sheffield. I'm not going to allow anybody to sort of just go, well, it proved it in the last year, it didn't work at all. So I'm just going to go back to doing everything as we did. That's the one thing that we don't have. Now, if they've got great reasons for certain aspects, got no issues with that. But if it's I'm not doing it because it didn't work and I don't like it, that's not good enough. And yeah, I just wanted to mention that quickly.
No, absolutely, I agree entirely. And actually, the other half of the question is then, well, does what you were going to go back to work better? Because it might well be that actually it doesn't. That it's that you would encounter exactly the same problems. It's just within a system that they're already comfortable with, so they don't ask us those kind of challenging questions of their own practice, do they? Excellent. So we are fast approaching the hour. We're a minute away now. So I just want to round up and say a huge thank you to Jackie for her presentation and for fielding all those questions. An enormous thank you, as always, to everyone else who's contributed. And we've had some fantastic conversations today. And we are recording this. It will be recorded up on our YouTube channel, hopefully early next week. And we have Dave Leonard from Matthew Moss joining us next week to share his 10 things on Monday virtual staff room. So do please come along and join us then.